concentrating most of their investigation in the first floor apartment unit, which belonged to the 74-year-old victim who lived alone, and residents say he relied on a scooter to get around. Now, as many remember, this is not far from the fire scene just before Christmas on Grand Ravine that claimed the life of a woman and her 2 children. They too lived in a Toronto housing complex, and that fire also renewed calls for the province to put into place mandatory residential sprinklers. Many fire officials here say that could have saved their lives as well as the life of this 74-year-old man who passed away in the fire early this morning. Now, with me now is City Councillor Anthony Peruza for this ward. Tell me, how important is it to put residential sprinklers in place? 2 deaths now in your ward.
Well, absolutely. I think that they would go a long way to preventing some of these tragedies from taking place. But more important than that, I think we need to take a look at some of the safety measures. We need to better educate the tenants, make sure that smoke detectors are working, try to find a way to reduce the number of false alarms. Because what happens is, even though the detectors go off and the alarms go off, people just simply sit back and say, oh, it's another one of those false alarms, and they, and maybe in some of these instances we could prevent some of these tragedies if we did a better job of that. So I'm of a mind to basically ask for an audit of these things.
And fire officials here on the scene say one single sprinkler could have saved many lives. And we know that in Vancouver, where they are in place, there have been a dramatic reduction in the amount of deaths that have resulted in fires. How important do you think it would be here, not only in your ward, but all over the city?
Well, exactly. We've been asking for that to take place for quite some time. Provincial government has resisted it. Obviously, the development industry is very powerful. There would be a cost to it. But I believe that safety should trump politics in this instance, and the government should move on it as quickly as possible, because, if we can save any life, then that's worth it.
Okay. Councillors, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And to recap, some residents in the north side of the building are still not allowed inside as police continue their investigation. Fire crews, of course, are still trying to determine exactly what caused the fire.
Hi there, welcome to City Online. Really glad you're with us today. It's always so sad when a life is lost, but when a tragedy can be prevented, well, it becomes an even more heartbreaking story. A 74-year-old man lived alone and died alone this morning in a fire in a low-rise Toronto community housing building. Fire Chief William Stewart is adamant that sprinklers would have saved his life and has renewed calls to make them mandatory in all residences in this province. We'd love to hear from you. Here are some phone numbers to get to us: 416-870-7716 or 1-800-295-5463. Now, home builders appear to be resistant to the idea because of costs and new codes that would be required. Maybe we'll hear from you as well. But can you really put a price on a human life? Here's our daily phone poll. We're asking you this: should residential sprinklers be mandatory? If you feel strongly yes, call 416-870-2242. Strongly no, 416-870-4444. We will have a look at the results at the end of the show. Right here with us right now, John Galt, president of the Canadian Automatic Sprinkler Association. Also, Toronto Councillor Anthony Peruza, a director on the board of Toronto Community Housing, and live at the scene of this morning's fire, Toronto Fire Captain Mike Strapko. Gentlemen, thank you so much. And Mike, thanks a lot for joining us.
You're welcome, Anthony.
So, Anthony, what are you going to do next as far as trying to increase the standards when it comes to protection against fire in Toronto community housing?
Well, we obviously have to go back. We've done it on several occasions already. We have to go back to the province. A couple of private members' bills were introduced in the legislature, one by a backbench Liberal member, and they just simply died on the order paper, and the government refuses to pick this initiative up and move forward with it. I understand, the development industry is very powerful, has a lot of influence, but the reality is, in this instance, safety should trump politics, and the government should move on this issue, especially as it relates to new developments. With the current housing stock, we really need to go back out and do some real education of people. We need to do our own audits much better. We need to make sure that people aren't disconnecting their smoke detectors. We need to figure out where the fire alarm where you pull the fire alarms, where those things are located, because locating them inside the unit obviously prevents far fewer false alarms. These are some of the things that we need to move to do.
And from Rosedale to Regent Park, doesn't matter. A life is a life, and it's priceless. Sylvia is with us. Hi, Sylvia.
Hi, Anne.
So your thoughts at this moment about what happened?
Well, my mother was in the building.
Was she?
Yes, and as a matter of fact, she's just down the hall from that lobby and that unit, and as a matter of fact, the man who passed away was one of her friends. And you know, Ann, you hit the nail on the head. My mother uses a scooter. There was no way for her to speedily get out because she'd have to go right past it. You know what I mean? They stuck her outside in her nightgown. I mean, the city has got to be one of the worst landlords, probably the biggest landlord and the worst landlord. You were right. There was complaints all the time, alarms going off all the time. The place is supposed to be geared towards low-income, retired and or sick people, and my mother said that it's full of drug abusers and crackheads that are always setting the alarms off, you know?
What's the answer? You sound so distressed.
I'm very distressed.
And
it's freezing cold out there.
How is your mom, by the way?
She's very, very shook up, and she's afraid. She's afraid, you know. And my mom's a very strong woman, and let me tell you, she's just scared out of her wits.
Well, she's raised a very strong woman in you, Sylvia, that's for sure. So what is the answer here? Sylvia?
I don't know.
Yeah.
What is the answer? I mean, sprinklers, sure, that would have helped. You know, they sat there and talked about the cost of sprinklers, okay? Well, what if they turn around now, and I don't know what the cause of the fire was, so I'm just kind of upset. But what if this man's family, he's got family somewhere, turns around and sues the city for millions and millions of dollars? Would the $10 a square foot be worth it then? You know?
Sylvia, thank you, and please give my very best to your mother.
Yes, thank you, Ann.
In fact, Sylvia makes a very good point. If Sylvia is the individual whose mother I let use my cell phone this morning to contact at work, I can tell you, I talked to the mother. She is distraught. She was outside the building. She is in a scooter. We were there trying to relocate some of the people that can't go back into their individual units. Some of them have been moved to a church up the street. They will be comforted. They will be fed, and later on in the day, we'll figure out where they can go and so on. But
our fire chief feels that all of this would have been prevented had there been sprinklers inside. Let's take a break. We'll be back with more of your calls on City Online. Stay with us.